makes humans different than animals, what makes us special, is that we have access to a spiritual power. A spiritual power that gives us choice. It gives us the tools to give form to life. The animal comes in its preconditioned form. The animal has a nature. The animal is simply going to play out whatever it was designed to be. But the human being is different. The human being has the capacity to speak. Speaking means he's going to give form to life. He's going to give form to the animal that he is. We're not going to know who he is. Speech is going to direct who he is. This wasn't the original intention of speech. This is how speech happened to play out. The speech that we have today is a descendant of a descendant from the original speech that was discovered. But the original speech that was discovered had the power to set consciousness on a journey. And the starting point was infinity. We could have started anywhere. And yet, according to how speech formed, and based on those few individuals that were involved in giving over speech, and the meaning of things, the meaning of life, the understandings of who created this experience and why they created this experience, and what's the purpose, what's the challenge, what's being measured, what will be rewarded. Those who got to start this conversation, they got to choose a point from the infinite. And from there, humanity started thinking of itself as a species. And so now this development correlates with the development of our physical body, our brains, our hearts, our kidneys, our sensitivities are also evolving. They're evolving on their own trajectory based on the original truth that created all. And the explanation of what's taking place is evolving separately in its own land, at its own pace, going in different directions that are not directly related to the evolution of our species internally based on the forces of the heavens. And so essentially, after we have speech, we now have two forms of ownership over reality. We have the ownership of the original creator, the one who designed the hardware, and we have the ownership of the little creator that designed the software. Together, they're creating our experience. We don't have our own experience. We cannot experience the big creator on our own. We can only experience the big creator if we go into the universe created by the little creator that's creating with words. So through the little creator's sight, vision, we can connect to the bigger creator, which was the original designer of humanity, the one that we don't know how to know because we've inherited after so many different hands, brains, hearts have been involved. The little creator has had a long time to develop his story before we got into the awareness of this debate. And so we don't know in our own perception what was placed there by the big creator and what was placed there by the little creator. the little creator, the speaker, the Nefesh HaMedaberes, is also one of the servants of the big creator. Everything that is serves the big creator. And so the little creator, even though now we said, oh, there are these two things in charge. There's now a debate about reality. There's the big creator, there's the little creator, but really, the little creator is just one of the servants of the big creator, just like the big creator has, without limit, servants all over the heavens, galaxies upon galaxies. However, how is this servant different? This servant is different because he is aware of what's taking place and he has separate control. What does it mean, separate control? It means that the way that nature was designed, it was designed that the process should start with the human energy, and based on that it should go in its cycle. And so because human energy is part of the natural cycle, it means that the human being gets to choose how the energy is going to go. It gets to choose how reality is going to be interpreted, and therefore what's going to take place on the planet. The human being is the soul of the planet. It's the consciousness of the planet. By being the consciousness of the planet, it's also the consciousness of the solar system. Because this planet is the only one that can go rogue. All the other planets can never go rogue. They're always going to do their function. This planet can go rogue depending on the little God that creates with words. And so, when humanity goes rogue, when humanity takes planet Earth to serve an alternative reality other than what is taking place through imagining things and wanting things to be and believing that the world is what it is not, or trying to make the world be what it is not, and all these different struggles that we have where we offend reality. So when the Earth goes rogue, then the solar system goes rogue. When the solar system goes rogue, then we call Mars Satan. Because then all the defense mechanisms within humanity, instead of protecting humanity, are going against humanity. Because humanity has labeled themselves rogue. They believe they're rogue. They believe they're not in line with what's going on over here. And when Mars is marked as the enemy of humanity, there's war. There's disease. There's conflict. Why? Humanity is turning on itself. The solar system is causing suffering to the inhabitants that have caused the world to go rogue. This is the same that would happen in the body. This is the same thing that would happen to an individual. It's the same thing that happens in the collective. The ancients all understood this. This wasn't an argument between the believers and the non-believers. There was no question about this. In fact, this is the very essence of idol worship. Idol worship first requires a realization that the stars and the planets are alive. And not only are they alive, but based on our relationship with them, things are happening on this planet. Before we know this, there's no base to do idol worship. This is why the rationalists, they don't even understand idol worship. They think those primitive minds didn't understand reality. How do we explain reality? Oh, we just say we don't know. Simple. But we also believe that no one ever knew, even though we don't know. Because if we don't know, it means it's not knowable. Because we haven't found the way to measure it yet, so it's not knowable, and therefore, even though we know that it must exist, but if we don't know it, no one ever knew it. And so they knew, and therefore they were more powerful than us. They were more developed in places that mattered. They didn't know how to make money like we do, but they knew a lot of other things. They knew how to live. They knew how to be themselves. They understood each other and themselves a lot better. They were also a lot more passionate about life, to the extent that they would kill and be killed for certain things. They were a lot more involved in what's taking place. They were a lot more awake. And so at first, humanity learned to speak. The little god went rogue, and then there was a flood. The big god fought back. Then there was another attempt, and after 10 generations, after Noach, there was a need for crowd control. There was a lot of people, and there was no system that was keeping them in line. And so there was a possibility that they were just going to revert back to what happened before the flood. And then humanity faced a choice. We can either aim for the truth. The truth is only obtainable if we are sincere, if we are authentic, if we work together, if we really want it with all our hearts. Then we can recognize reality, and we can help each other avoid illusion. Or we create an illusion that becomes so convincing that it turns into a prison of the minds. We can control what they're going to think and what they're going to do. They'll have a menu. We're not going to remove the menu, but they're going to be able to choose from the choices that have already been decided to be included in the menu. So this became the beginning of civilization. Civilization as we know it today. We can't know what the event looked like and what types of discussions were going on. But something happened, and soon after the flood, there were different languages and different nations. The speaking God no longer spoke as one. The little God broke away into 70 different little gods. And this was because the wisdom that creates understood that if man works together, he has the power to move and to change. And when man is conflicted, when each is speaking a different language, they have less ability to communicate, and therefore they will ground each other in different realities. They will constantly be competing with each other, rather than really getting to the core of what's in everybody's best interest. And so now the people, the citizens that are going to live in these 70 cultures, are not going to be serving the big, unified creator the way that it once would have been. They're going to be serving through their national interpretation of what that creator is. They're going to be serving a form created by priests, a form created by other humans, a form created by the original little God before he split up into 70 little gods. They're going to be worshipping one of the 70 little gods. They're not going to be worshipping the one big God. This is what the Pesach says. Kikol Elehei Amim Elilim. Elilim means little gods. It doesn't say they don't have power at all. It says they're little gods, meaning they're not really the source. They were designed by humans. Vashem Shamayim Asa. The name that we worship formed the heavens. Meaning our worship goes back directly to the original creator. Why is that so? Because Avraham Avinu didn't want to buy into any of these cultures. And he didn't want to create a culture of his own either. Avraham Avinu believed that every soul needs to be liberated. We shouldn't tell it stories. We shouldn't tell it metaphors. We shouldn't tell it riddles. We should tell it directly what's happening so that it knows how to interact with reality, what's in its own best interest. A soul shouldn't be serving based on the aggregate best interest blindly. A soul should understand the best interest of the individual, the best interest of the collective, because souls are constantly evolving. What gives the right to one generation to dictate to another generation how they're supposed to express their life force? And so the original intent was that every generation creates its own beliefs. No generation inherits beliefs. But then, once civilization started creating beliefs, writing beliefs, ingraining beliefs into the minds of the young, now there was a necessity for a written word that's going to tell us the truth about all these writings. And so the ancient magicians, when we speak about the Egyptian magicians in the Pasuk, they're called Khartoumim. Khartoumim means those who wrote the hieroglyphs, those who made the inscriptions, the writings. They were the magicians. They were the first to do that. The Sumerians and the Egyptians started writing clay tablets, symbols, creating beliefs, creating forms that are going to be misunderstood by their very nature. Forms started to drive the worship. People would start outdoing each other in the forms that they formed. The life force started becoming enslaved. What was speech really created for? Speech was created for worship. Worship in the form of praise. Praise in order to bring to consciousness the greatness of the big God, the original creator, the source. Speech was created to communicate to the human awareness, the greatness of the source. Because that's the medicine that it needs. When the human source will be completely consumed by the wonder and the kindness of the source, only then will it heal. Nothing else can heal it. And so this is why we have speech, to give access to each other of what we found, what diamonds have we come across, what precious stones have we seen on our path that illuminate the greatness, the power, the compassion of the source that made us all. When speech was used to create laws, to create control, to create instruction, speech fell from heaven to hell. Speech became, instead of an enhancer of life, a reducer of life, a constrictor of life. The most developed in speech, the ones who were wise more than all the other nations, but they were wicked. Wicked not in the secular sense. If we were to compare their societies to our societies today, they would seem very generous and kind. It was much easier for them to be kind. They actually knew what we need. Today, to be kind is just about money. And money is a zero-sum game. There's only a certain amount, and then in order for one to get, someone has to lose. But compared to the divine purpose of what life really is, they were wicked. Wicked meaning they didn't see to the greatness of life. They didn't understand what the human soul deserves. So what they created became a trap for the human soul. Nobody ever left that trap. It was so sophisticated. It was so thought through on all the different levels. It was so deeply rooted in the biology of the human body that nobody ever managed to escape. And so when Avraham Avinu came to the Creator and he said, I want to help this situation. I want to help the human soul succeed. I want to serve you. I don't want to serve any of the little gods. I wasn't created to worship something that's man-made. That's not going to satisfy my deepest yearnings. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Youre, ki ger yezarachu be'eretz lo elem. You want to serve me? You're going to have to become very familiar with these 70 little gods. Your first step is going to be by the biggest one. You're going to have to get to know him, and you're going to have to overpower him. If you want to serve me, that's the only way to serve me, because the 70 little gods have taken the earth. I no longer have a foothold in this earth. You want to give me a foothold in this earth? Take them on. And so Paro believed that he is the God, because nature chose him to be in charge of the people. Nature chose him to be the biggest king in the world. And so it wasn't him, It was something bigger than him that decided. And so he said, Li Youre v'ani asisi. It's my river, I made it. What does it mean, I made it? The essence that creates me created everything, and it gave me power over everything. In my awareness, I'm more aligned with the thinking of the source than everybody that's under me. And there's truth in that. Lev melochem v'sorim b'yad Hashem. Meaning his perception is divine will, because it happens instantly. So when the divine wants to do something instantly, he comes to him. That's where he does stuff instantly. If we need to kill somebody immediately, we go to the king. He can do it. He can get it done. Nobody else can do it. So Paro is receiving messages. Paro's dreams are meaningful. The world is thinking in his mind. But then comes Moshe and says, hey Paro, I met someone that's more powerful than you and he has a message. Paro says, let me check. I have a book of all the gods. He knew everything. He knew the forces of nature. He knew all the nations. He knew all the gods. He had it all figured out. And here comes Moshe and says, no, there's someone else. Who is that someone else? It can't be. I know everyone. And so Moshe Rabbeinu tells him, you know everyone, that's true, but you're not aligned with the will that created everyone. You're not aligned with the unity. You're enslaving people. You're not bringing out their highest potential. You're making yourself comfortable on their behalf. Do you think this was the intention of the one who created all? And so if you're not aligned with his intention, you might not have any enemies in the manifested world, but boy, are you in a lot of trouble. Everybody that you've hurt that wasn't justified, you're going to have to answer for that. It was your decision. And so then this conflict between the source, the force that created all, the one that is, always was and always will be, and the little gods created by the speakers. This conflict is at the root of every single one of us that is in their own exile. This suffering didn't just happen. We're all parts of that story. That story is still happening. The conflict is not yet over. And so inside of us there are parts that take us and make things better, and there are parts that take us and make things worse. If there wasn't those parts, we would just keep getting better and better and better and better. There's no limit. Everything that's holding us back is that we form some form of balance. Maybe our balance is a little over and there's more damage being done, or maybe our balance is a little over and we're moving a little bit ahead. But nevertheless, there are always portions that are pushing us back. There are always these thoughts that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And what leads to this, what brings us to these thoughts, is that inside of us there's a lot of knowledge that's false. There are a lot of conclusions that are not based in reality. There are a lot of fears that are not rational. And all these are coming from somewhere. There's someone that's in charge of them. And that someone is constantly changing face. So in Mitzrayim we'll meet him as Paroi, and in Bavel we'll meet him as Nebuchadnezzar. In Asher we might meet him as Sancherev. In Paras we meet him as Achashverosh, but it's all the same one. It's whoever gets to represent Mars. Why they're representing Mars? Because their power comes from the fact that humanity feels guilty with its own behavior. How can they enslave so many people? It's because these people don't realize what they truly deserve. These people have been sold a story that made them small, that made them easy to manage. And so as soon as these people are in a state of guilt, they will find someone that will balance the scales. As soon as humanity is going to go rogue, we're now going to need a representative on earth that's going to balance the scales. These people would willingly offer themselves for the job. And so they had tremendous power. The world needed this balance, and the balance was coming through them. But it's not the ultimate will that designed us. It's based on circumstances. It's based on a specific situation. When that situation changes, the ultimate will returns. It's a remedy to some form of a disease. But it's not really the way that it was meant to be. Humanity today is in the middle of a remedy for some form of a disease, many forms of disease. Humanity has been belittled, so belittled that people have lost the proper perspective on the value of life. And we see this in the behaviors of the people. Of course, there are many that know and understand better. And yet, if those who knew and understood better enough, then there wouldn't even be those who didn't understand. If at the lowest end of the spectrum is people who are willing to just take life for no reason, then even at the highest end of the spectrum, we're not going too high. And so this is something that we were meant to bring to the world. That there's something real behind all of this. It didn't just happen. We're not supposed to find the solutions for nature. Nature has all the solutions before we got here. We're supposed to tune in. We're supposed to tune into the divine will. The divine will knows what it needs. If we're in conflict with the divine will, it doesn't matter how many of us together, we're never going to win. And so the essence of Yetzias Mitzrayim is that we learn to convert everything that comes through into the unity. We learn to reflect. As things arise within our process, we learn to reflect what's coming from the big one, from the source, what belongs, and what's coming from the little one. What's an addition that's artificial, that's causing damage, causing indigestion, doesn't flow through the system. Because certainly, just like physically, if we're eating the right foods, if we're processing the right information, our body will be healthy. our mind will be healthy. Our spirit will be healthy. If we're giving it the wrong information, if we're eating the wrong food, there will be consequences. So every year we try to refresh again. Every year we try to leave mitsrayim again. What does mitsrayim mean? Mitsrayim is a lashon of meitzar, being enclosed, being made small, artificial barriers. It could be that the name of the country was never Mitzrayim. When the Torah calls it Mitzrayim, it's because this is the essence of the nature of what it did. It doesn't have to be the name. Who cares what it was called? Could be that the name was also accurate. But either way, the message for us is certainly not the name. The message for us is the essence of that awareness, of that consciousness. Where did it enclose the life force? How did it give form to the life force where it created conflict with the essence? How did it form in a way that didn't allow the essence to flow? And that's because it created mitsrayim, it created limitations of what a human being is. It created interpretations that suited it for some alternative purpose. Not simply to glorify what was manifested from beyond. And so the lashon of meitzar is the lashon of tsar, the lashon of tzara. Every tzara is smallness in the nefesh. If the nefesh is not in a tzara, if the nefesh is not small, then it doesn't matter what is happening and it's not really a tzara. The tzara becomes on how it affects the nefesh. Tzara is a state of a nefesh. Mitzrayim is to create that feeling within the nefesh. Why? Because then the nefesh is much easier to negotiate with. It doesn't have that much power. Like when Klal Yisrael comes to ask to leave, so Pari says, it simply means give them more forms to create with their life force so they have no time to try to understand what's really happening. So they should constantly, from the moment they wake up till the moment they go to sleep, they should be giving form and never have time to return to taste the essence. Because then what happens? The form freezes within the personality, within the mind, within the perception, within all the reactions. After a few years of creating the same forms, and that form just keeps on going unless we learn how to break it. We're all built into such forms. We've all been built into certain walls. Everybody that's born into a culture is receiving some type of mitsrayim, just based on the fact that they want them to perform a certain way. That way is not the natural way, therefore there's a discrepancy. And then within the stories, within the beliefs, if the story and the beliefs are tailored to make someone feel comfortable in the culture, we know for sure that it's not really tailored to what's good for the soul. So the pasuk says, "Min ha-meitzar karosika, ononi b'merchavka." Ka, the two letters Yud and Hey, represent two intelligences. The intelligence that gives power to the brain, Yud. The intelligence that gives power to the heart, Hey. When we are in a tzara, when the nefesh is in a tzara, where is it really happening physically? It's happening within the organs. And so we call out to the intelligence that's the source, that's operating the organs. It's operating all our organs at the same time. It's the power that gives intelligence within the organs to know how to react to every situation, even to the noise I'm making now. It's the Yud and the Hey together that are interpreting the noise that I'm making. And each one interpreting based on the vessel that's already there, the memories, the emotions, the information. Everything is being calculated, but who is doing the calculation? The Yud and the Hey. Mina Meitzar Karosiya. From Mitzrayim I call him. I call him because he can liberate me. He knows what's true and what's not true. He knows when I have two voices in my head that are arguing with each other, he knows which one is the real one and which one is the imposter. One of them is carrying wrong information. One of them is lying. If I'm in touch with Yud, I can tell who is lying. If I'm in touch with Hey, I will know how to react to this information. If I'm not in touch with Yud, if I'm not in touch with Hey, the information is just running. There's nobody really that knows. Whoever has more energy is going to win. There's no referee that's making sure that the fight is fair. Anoni b'merchavya. If I call out to the right intelligence, he will answer me. He won't answer me in Mitzrayim. He will bring me out of Mitzrayim and then he will answer me. That's going to be his answer. What did you say is bothering you? Mina Meitzar Karosiya. I call the intelligence while my soul is being pressed. It feels small. It feels small because it gave form and it's afraid of the form that it gave. So I'm calling to the intelligence that gives form. What form did you give me? I'm scared of this form. Ononi ba'merchavya. What did you say was bothering you again? Did you understand what you're saying? Are you still afraid? We see things, we think things, we conclude things. Where does this all exist? It exists only in our mind. Do we know the context of creation? Have we put the puzzle together? No, we've randomly concluded right in the middle, right in the center of the board. We don't know what's going on. We don't have the right underlying materials to come to real conclusions. We're experiencing. We're becoming aware of different parts. We're seeing relationships. We're seeing correlations. But we don't know the ultimate purpose. We don't know the direction. Culture pretends we do. That's what culture does in order to put people asleep. Culture pretends like we already know the answers. Why bother? Don't worry. We've checked it all out. We'll tell you everything you want to know, except what we don't know, which is basically everything. And so what culture did is present a face, and then based on that face, people will worship, and people will try to become, and people will grow, and people will climb a ladder that leads to nowhere. It's a big tower that has really no purpose other than holding the people together and keeping them from looking elsewhere for real answers. And this is why the night that's coming upon us is so important. This is where generation to generation parents told their children, don't get so excited by what you see. Don't get so excited by what looks glamorous and flashy. Don't get so excited by people who put a big smile on their face and they seem like they're always happy because somehow they're always in front of a camera. Because there's something real behind all this, and they are not part of it. They have not realized it. They're playing a game. This is not a game. Life is not a game. It's like a game, but it's very, very real. Dangerously real. How dangerous? If we just look at the world, see what happens on this planet. Very, very dangerous. And we give form to it. We've been entrusted with giving form to the ultimate form, the form that's most important, the form that gives form to all other forms. And when we leave the body, we know what we did. We know for who we did it. Even inside the body we know, but we forgot. We forgot because we were stuck in so many different places in our brain for so long. We've been creating similar forms for so long that we can't see through them anymore. All we see is our yesterday. We don't see beyond. We don't think of reality based on how it was before we got here. All we think is what happened since I got here. See, mitsrayim means to be able to transcend this form of thinking. This form of thinking is slavery. It doesn't matter how nice it is. It doesn't matter in what palace we serve. If we're repeating yesterday, it's slavery. We're serving a form. Yesterday doesn't exist. It exists in its own place permanently, forever and ever. But it's not here now unless you make it be. And so Moshe represents an awakening of the soul within Paroi, who is the letters Ha'ofar, the lowest of the elements, the element that is the hardest to give form to. And therefore, when it takes on a form, it gets dried up in that form. It becomes like cement, like building blocks. Moshe comes to Paroi. The awakening comes to the force running the body. And says, let the life force out of your forms. Your forms are enslaving the life force. You're not allowing this soul to manifest on planet Earth. Let the life force free. Let the life force go. And Paroi is not quick to surrender. Paroi has his own fears. Paroi has his own intentions, has his own reasons, has his own agenda. He's not budging. He's not going anywhere. And yet, the will that's beyond is aligned with the awakening. And therefore, the awakening is going to break the forms. The intelligence eventually breaks all the forms. And when the intelligence breaks all the forms, there's a revelation. And when the intelligence reveals itself to the awareness, then there's a giving over of the unity that says, Anochi Hashem Elokecho, asher hotzesicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I'm the one that broke you out of all your forms. I was the intelligence that woke up in you, and now you've grown enough, you've developed enough that I can speak to you directly. And so this exile is an exile of the soul. As soon as she starts speaking, she's told a story that inside of her she knows is not true. And yet she's not old enough, she's not mature enough, she's not powerful enough, she's not articulate enough to be able to argue back. It feels wrong. The soul knows it's wrong. And yet the big people are saying, and the soul has no choice other than to believe them. Until it creates the forms long enough, and it itself starts repeating the same lies. This struggle is a very real struggle. The whole Torah is only here for this struggle. All the mitzvahs we do are zecher l'yitzias mitsrayim. By a big portion of them we even mentioned that. But all the mitzvahs have all the mitzvahs in them, meaning all the mitzvahs are about yitzias mitzrayim. All the mitzvahs are about believing in the unity. All the mitzvahs are about the holiness of the bris. All the mitzvahs are about the loftiness of the neshama, and therefore kedushas HaShabbos, and therefore all the different details that we do, they all lead back to the same one thing. The one thing, which is that a human being is something. That something, if it's realized, it's like all the mitzvahs were kept. That something, if it's not realized, none of the mitzvahs were kept. That something is the one that knows what the mitzvahs are. He can keep them. Nobody else can keep them. We can practice, we can try. But the mitzvah is the realization of the unity within space and time. And this realization comes only through something alive inside of us that needs to be alive. It's a technical truth. It's not something that we can fake. Egypt is the mother of all the other exiles. Without Egypt, there would be no other exiles. The other exiles are further development of only a portion of the Egyptian toolbox. The Egyptian toolbox included all the other forms of manipulation, and some of them were developed more and more. Like even till today, things are still developing. People are still going into work every day trying to figure out a better way of motivating employees and keeping their mind on the work 24/7. So they have no time to be busy with anything else, because then if they're busy with anything else, then they won't spend all of their life force in the work, and maybe the work will be a little bit less important to them, God forbid. And so this form of enslaving the human mind has caused us to sell our minds cheap. The reason technology is taking over the minds is because our minds are so easy, they're so gullible. We don't have the deep joys of life. We don't have the deep joys of connection. And so the little joys, a little dopamine boost, is enough to keep us enslaved to our devices. This is all part of the same process, the same trajectory. And freedom means returning to a place where life has its original meaning. We're not meant to add anything to life. We're not meant to build new things and discover new things. We're meant to be here so that we can discover ourselves. We have enough to discover for billions of years, just right inside of us. We shouldn't be bothering trying to discover anything else. If we have a specific problem, a specific need, then we should of course try to solve it. And then return to the original task, discovering the human soul and its potential. And all of its potential is written within our bodies. Everything is there for a reason. A lot of it we didn't get to yet. A lot of the potentials within our body we've never experienced. Not just us today, but even as a species. There are many dormant functions that are waiting for humanity to be curious enough about themselves so they can discover it and share it with each other and enjoy. Rather than the way that it was with the little gods, where everything a little god discovered about humanity, he would keep secret and never divulge to anyone, because maybe he will give them more power. Maybe now the other god will have more power if I tell them my secrets. So humanity is going to be in a very different mindset than the little gods had, than what created the culture that we're used to. And therefore the culture is not going to be driven by fear. People are not going to be controlled, not going to be forced. Everything is going to come from an inner desire, which is our natural source of energy. When this struggle is going to come to an end, the world is going to wake up to an entirely new reality. It's going to seem new, but it's not a new reality. It's the reality, the original reality. The original reality that's called the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light. Why is it called the hidden light? Because when the little god came with his words, he covered that light and made it dark. The hidden light is really the light of the little god. The little god that covered himself in darkness as soon as he learned how to talk. And so the revelation of the hidden light will only be revealed after we leave the forms of mitsrayim. After we stop creating ourselves in form and we return to the essence, we return to the life force that is the hidden light. And that revelation is going to bring an end to the trajectory of evil, to the wars and the conflict, to the competition that drives humanity. And this is why Nimrod originally wanted to kill Abraham, wanted to kill Avraham Avinu, because based on the stars they saw, that a descendant of this man is going to put an end to all the kingdoms that Nimrod was putting in place. All the 70 gods are going to fall to the descendant of this one man called Avram, because he is going to make the name of the source popular on this planet, and the name of the source will automatically devour all cultures and all interpretations. So this name that we worship represents the name that is before the 70 little gods, the name of the human intelligence before it was covered by the Arla of the 70 little gods that created interpretations that are inaccurate. We worship the name, we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That the name that is our power is the name of the unity, not the name of any specific detail that came forth from the unity. the unity itself as the root. And that root has a process, and that process we can enhance through our speech, through our thought, through our action. The reason it needs enhancement is because it's been violated by human thought, human speech, human action. So our work is to restore what we ourselves have violated, to bring honor to the places where we have brought shame and embarrassment, to bring glory to the name that is, that we should see the beauty in mankind, even if the cultures have made them ugly. We should see the potential, we should see the soul, we should see what's beyond the culture, we should see what they're capable of, based on the way they were designed by the source, and not judge them based on how they've been interpreted by the little gods. The little gods took their power away, that's why they look ugly. They're broken because they're lacking access to their truth. So may we all find the light within our own darkness, the way out from the forms that make us small, that make us weak, that tie us to the past in a way that's not healthy. And we should be able to access the joy that comes from realizing the true nature of reality. We should be able to express that joy, be a vessel for that joy to everybody that we encounter. And humanity as a whole should be able to experience that joy together. May it happen soon.